And welcome back to Propped by the Bar, episode 16, if you can believe that, Gareth.
Can't believe we made it this far.
And we're actually...
Netflix are going to call at any stage. You can feel it.
It's coming. It's coming. But we're doing a little bit of bar hopping, or we're on a bit of a pub crawl this week. We're jumping from venue to mix it up. And we've gone to a different format this week. Much of the feedback that's come into the program has asked us where interest rates are going. So we're, much to Gareth's disappointment, we're forgoing the property by the...
I've been sacked from my own segment.
Property of the month. And we're actually going to bring in a industry expert, Ross Mclachlan, to talk to us about interest rates and where he sees inflation. And
yeah, Ross is great. He's a really knowledgeable guy. So it's going to be interesting to see what he has to say about things, and especially with the changes that are happening at the moment, which are impacting our market right now, and these cash rate changes, and how that's perceived in the banking world, and how it's seen at the banking, and that's where we're seeing it, because there's money drying up, isn't it?
Yep.
So,
and we'll be interviewing Joel McGuinness, the CEO and creative director at the Geelong Arts Centre. They've got plenty on in the throes of 186 million redevelopment. So we really look forward to finding out the inside scoop.
Joel's awesome. I've got a little bit of a surprise and a request for Joel, and it may involve some circus acts, but he may or may not want to do them. We'll find out.
Anyway, so how you find the market?
It's hard to read, really hard to read. This is probably the hardest time to read a market, because that's really what we do as valuers. Yeah. We sort of have to sit back and look at settled sales. Predominantly, we have to rely on what they call primary evidence, and primary evidence is what they call settled sales. So, although we can take in consideration sales that are sold and not settled, which are much more recent, our primary approach has to be based upon settled sales, and that's what makes our job very difficult at the moment. And I'll give you an example. There's been 4 sales sold in the last 4 weeks along Marlborough Street, all investment sales, right? And they have shown about a 0.25 increase on cap rates, depending on when they were sold, to the cash rate. So, for example, the cash rate jump was 0.5. Yeah. These were jumping by 0.25 in the cap rate once you did the analysis. And the cap rate for viewers is the income, so the rent, divided by the sale price, and that gives us a measurement of the profitability of that property. And as we see increasing cap rates, what it's meaning is that purchasers are wanting to have more return for their investment, so they're seeing it as more risky investment. So we've seen cap rates come up from 3.5% in these retail stuff, and now we're talking 4.25%, 5% and higher.
Which 12 months ago was still a very low yield.
Oh, 12, 18 months ago, you would say, geez, I remember us sitting here probably at this episode 1, talking about how good it was that cap rates come down to 4.5%. Yeah. Well, we're well and truly past 4.5%. Yeah. We're back up closer to 5 for retails. What the interesting thing is what markets are holding and what aren't. Industrial's still really holding its make in the market.
Let me ask you residentially, if you're assessing sales that are, say, settling now, and you're looking from a finance perspective, like if you're comparing them to settled sales of 6 months ago, where the market was very much active pre any interest rate rises, are you having to dispensate current sale, or
you're negligent?
How are you looking at it?
So you're negligent as a valuer if you're not looking at them as at the date that you value the property. Yep. So you've got to put them. You've got to make adjustments to the evidence, to your outcome based on the evidence, but also you've got to take in consideration the changing markets, because your job is to value it as at the date that you walk through the property. And you can't just go and grab. So if for anybody out there that's having their properties valued, if you've got sales in your valuations, or valuations relied on sales outside 3 months or 6 months, you're in a bit of strife. You're going to have a different sort of...
It throws that whole statement of information out the window too.
Well, the statement of information thing would be very difficult for you guys. I think you guys found it difficult in the first place anyway.
Well, we did,
but now it's really, that it's coming down to the valuers knowing their market, their local market, and knowing what's happening in their local market. And I'm telling all my guys to go to every auction. To go to auctions and see what's happening in the marketplace, to read clearance rates, to how many bidders, count the number of bidders, see how many properties are sitting on the market past auction, how many properties, how long the days in sale, how long they're taking to sell. Well, so this is valid right now. You have to be hot on your toes to know what's going on.
Well, I've got a list here to show the complexities of the market, and I guess the up and down. I've got a list of 10 suburbs that have actually increased in the last 3 months, and a list of 10 suburbs that have decreased. So the ones on the list of increase...
Let's hear this. I want to hear this. This is good.
Anglesea, There was 82 sold over that period.
Yeah.
Has had a 21.9% increase over the last 3 months, which
21%, that's one sale though.
probably.
Yeah.
Belpost Hill with 75 sales increased by 11.3%.
Yep.
Lewis 94 sales, an increase of 5%. And in the top 4, Highton, which increased by 4.7% on 322 sales. So a lot happening in that area.
What interests me about most of those that have increased is 3 of those are established suburbs. One of them is a coastal, which I expect, in my opinion, there's a different market between coastal and inner suburban Geelong now. There's definitely a separation of values. So Anglesea, a lot less stock down there, so there's been some, obviously showing it's one big sale, maybe a couple of big sales perhaps, but they're showing the data. But the rest is
Conversely, though,
established suburbs.
On the down, Geelong West fell 11%.
Yeah, it's funny you say
St
that.
Leonard's 6.2%, Bannockburn 5.4%, and Hamlin Heights 5%.
So I am seeing a cap in the market in Geelong West a little bit. So we're seeing your standard renovated Kel bungalow type Edwardian there, slipping back to values that they were getting in 2019, 2020. So with that 1.25 sort of mark, we've still had a couple of sales. There was one sale, I think, in the last month in Geelong West that got to 1.7, but there hasn't been too many above that 1.25 threshold. So they have to be pretty something special to get that. But even Newtown, there's even some sales in Newtown that are slipped back to 2019, 2020 type figures.
Yeah, we're returning to that FOMO that we've discussed over the last 12 months.
It's gone.
Is gone. Normalised market, but good home permit, I guess, figures coming out.
And the other thing I would just note about some of your downside before you go back at that one and look at some of these other ones. So you had Bannockburn and St Leonard's. They're both high growth suburbs whose sales have been a lot in the land market. So they're very much usually a lot of the number of sales are coming from vacant land lots in development.
Which we know is drying up.
Which is pulled right back. Rory Costello in the paper, I think he said that from Villawood. Have a look at one of our previous episodes for Rory, but I think he said 32% down this year in the number of land sales and 63% down from where they were last year.
He actually come out and said, "Don't buy now."
I've never heard a developer say don't buy land, but he said don't buy.
Which is interesting. I know there's still...
Maybe we read that wrong, Rory, but that's what I heard. That's what I read.
Well, that's what I read. But you know what they say, believe half of what you see and nothing what you hear.
Oh, well, you know, he's not wrong. He's saying, and I think he was targeting at first home buyers, is don't buy land and build and expect to come out on top at the moment. And he's right, and because building costs have gone up so much, time to build is so much. If you're a young person who's starting out in life, you don't want to see them tied to a block of land that's going to take 18 months to settle and going to take another 6 months.
Well, I think that's the interesting one. Those that already have bought land, say in the peak, hasn't titled.
Yeah.
Now they're going to need to get finance, be reassessed when it comes time to build.
Yeah.
They're dealing with a different set of circumstances, and now their living expenses, everything's going to come into it. It's whether there's going to be some hurt in the industry where people have bought blocks and now can't get the finance to build. It'll be an interesting little space.
We haven't seen a drop in the value of the blocks though. They're still about $1,200 a square metre.
Yeah, but it's their lend on the actual build.
Yeah, but the lend is going to be based on the underlying land value, and that hasn't come back yet.
Yeah.
So it's only the construction costs that get going up. So there's just no benefit in it. There's no snow. There used to be a bit of a benefit. You build, buy the land and build, and you have a 40, 50 grand buffer. You'd make profit. That's not there anymore. That's gone. That's all gone to the builders.
The other little stat that we come across was 4,226 new dwellings were approved in the 2021 period. That was a 20.5% increase on the previous year.
So that's people that bought in the peak, trying to build now. And we're not going to see this decrease in wages and labour and costs and all this sort of this price gouging on construction. We're not going to see that ebb until we get over the hurdle of all these new constructions. So I have a connection at Powercore who tells me that the connection times, lead times to get electricity hooked up to new lots is about 26 weeks at the moment. And that's a huge amount of time, half a year. You've got to wait before the electrical gets connected after you put your order in. So you've got to build the house and the electrician's got to basically order the connection before they start construction. So if it's going to take you 6 months to build, you need 6 months lead time to tell them to hook up the house.
A little bit of candlelight dinners for 6 months.
There is, and there's people that can't settle on those houses or can't get certificate of occupancy because they can't get electrical hookups. There's people who are sitting in there literally running off generators waiting to get hookup. This this is just not just Powercore, this is right across the whole industry, and it's not necessarily Powercore's fault. There's just the demand on and its entire construction industry is massive, and the public sector, with the tunnel and other things, is just making this bigger and bigger problem around construction.
So, talking about demand,
yeah.
What are you seeing demand-wise in terms of residential rentals?
Well, rentals jumped by 3.4% in the June quarter. So just in the June quarter rentals jumped again. What I was hearing from some well-known listing agents, though, residential agents, rental agents, is that the quality of the people looking at the moment isn't. They're saying, yes, we are getting 60 applications of 25 houses, but the amount of documentation information they've got these days is really good. They can see how many of those applications didn't pay the rent last time in the previous house. So they're saying at least half of the people that are putting up submissions have got pretty poor rental history. Right. So I think the main thing is to people out there is make sure you are, if you're going to rent a new house and you've got poor rental history, you might want to sort that out first. But and the other thing is, even in the residential market, in regional Victoria grew by 1.3% over the June quarter across the whole regional area. So, we're not going bad.
And I think we've always talked about Geelong being a bit insulated from some of the other market or wide market.
But it's not just Geelong now. Ballarat's going flying. Ballarat's probably leading Geelong in a lot of stats. Bendigo's going well. Warrnambool's had a huge population increase and it's still going. Every regional town in regional Victoria is flying. It's just they're having issues in Melbourne.
Yep.
But
I reckon it's about that time where we're going to bar hop. Let's go and interview Joel McGuinness at.
Do we get another bottle of wine when we go to see Johnny?
We'll take one for the road.
And
we'll have a chat about how important the arts precinct and.
We can play Johnny off against Cam. We'll tell Johnny that the wine over here was better, and then Johnny will give us a better bottle over there.
It's got it worked out. But anyway, the importance of the culture precinct is on Geelong, and of course their great big redevelopment that's underway. And then we'll get on to interview Ross Mclachlan on some of the rates and inflation and other bits and pieces happening. Again, if you want to hear from us two bozos, hit the bell and hit subscribe. Otherwise, let's hop over across the road.
Bottoms up.
See you, mate.
Cheers.
Our special guest this month is Joel McGuinness, who is an experienced creative entrepreneur, producer and executive administrator who is passionate about performing arts, communities and the virtual role of culture in change making. Joel is currently the Chief Executive Officer and Creative Director of the Geelong Arts Centre, currently overseeing a $186 million capital redevelopment. Before moving to Geelong, Joel founded his own company, Jam Creative Arts, which worked with over 20 art organisations across Western Australia. It was here that Joel was elected Member of Local Government to the City of Bunbury, advocating for change across a growing city, fiercely supportive of arts, culture and diversity as critical to community life. The Geelong communities are very fortunate to have Joel at the helm of the Arts Precinct, and we're particularly fortunate to have him as a guest on Prop this month. So Joel.
Thanks guys. Thanks
for joining us.
Quite the intro. Didn't realise I'd done all that stuff.
Yeah, well, I was impressed how much he read out of it. So I thought he was going to memorise the whole thing. Welcome.
Thank you.
It is daunting when you see some of your CV come in because you don't know where to start. But Bunbury, let's start with Bunbury. Is that where you grew up?
I grew up in Margaret River, and so south of Bunbury, so Western Australia. I grew up.
Regional. So you like your reds?
Do. I'd actually like my whites better, but that's okay. I'm not going to complain. Thank you, fellas. So I grew up in Western Australia, regional Western Australia, a small country town called Denmark, which is down near Albany, so 5 hours south of Perth.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and then I moved to Margaret River, and that's where my family is today. And so I went back to the role at Bunbury Entertainment Centre to head up the redevelopment there. That was a big capital project, and design and constructive of a big theatre project, and that was most recently before I came over this way.
Yeah, and Denmark, so because I was reading your CV that you're the youngest committee member of the Denmark Arts Committee in Denmark, and I thought, did he go to Holland?
No.
That makes sense, it's in WA.
Yeah, it was just one of those things where I really got into arts and culture early on, and I kind of figured out, even at the age of 16, that if you want things to change, you've got to be part of it. You've actually got to get involved and be part of that change you want to see.
It's a good segue to why I'm wearing this tie. Is it true, at age 14, you had your first job in a circus as a clown?
No.
No. Damn.
I had my first job very close.
I told him that's a stitch up.
Not at all, mate. What are you talking about? No. So I ran away and joined the circus when I was 16 from Denmark, from a real country town, and I went and walked as a stilt walker. So close, mate, close. Yeah. As a stilt walker in the circus. But I was working it was when the Freo Dockers first started. They'd only been going a year or two.
The purple jumpers.
Yeah, and so I was in these giant stilt walking costumes and used to walk around the stilt walking, and I was like, wow, getting paid $50 an hour. And I was 16 years old, so yeah, close.
So the skills are still there?
Yeah, I can kind of do a bit of...
It's just funny you say that, because I might have brought in a few props for you, just to see if you're inkling. Can you give us a bit?
All right, I'm trying to stand up about this, and we don't want to lose any wine, because the wine is precious, but I'll give it a go.
Oh, very good. Well done.
There we go.
Awesome.
But I'm not wearing the rainbow bow tie.
So you can get him into one of these.
Give these back.
Yep, there we go. Fantastic. Isn't it's funny how sometimes, would you have guessed at the age of 16, you start in an industry, you know, that you're now sort of the pinnacle of. That's, you know, you're still in the arts, you're still very much highly involved in arts and creative arts. You're actually not just the CEO of the GPAC, of Geelong Arts Centre, you're also the creative director.
Yeah.
And so you were always involved from such a very early age. What a journey.
Yeah, look, it was one of those things where this international circus clowning convention came to my small country town and I got involved. And at that stage, I was growing up in country town. I played footy, I played basketball, I did every sort of thing that was around. And but this this clowning convention came to our town, all these international people, and I was like, this is awesome. And I just really wanted to be involved in it. So I ran away, joined the circus, ended up going and studying theatre making at WAPA, so the WA Academy of Performing Art, which is a really highly regarded art school in Australia. And then later on went back to NIDA, the National Institute of Dramatic Arts, and studied cultural leadership. So it was kind of, I loved the art side of things, I loved the creative side of things, but I really always had this idea that I wanted to contribute, make stuff happen in the community where I live. And that's kind of what's always driven me on this path to now as CEO and creative director, but it's always come from that, how do I change and do good stuff in the community, and a love and a passion for the art.
You obviously did a lot in the community with being a council. You obviously got very passionate to get into politics. Yeah. You'd have to be. But then in Bunbury, you also were in charge of a redevelopment of the Arts Centre, fairly similar on a much smaller scale perhaps than what we're going through at GAC. So it was a 12 million odd development. Yeah, that's right. And is that set you in good stead for the $186 million development you got down the road? Yeah, look, 100%. I mean, I've kind of been working my way up, if you like, in art centres from smaller regional art centres to bigger ones. And then I've also, I think you've got to be good at business. You've got to have you've got a head for business as well. I sort of think of myself as an entrepreneur as well as an artist and a creative person, and that's not a skill set that a lot of people have. Do you know what I mean? A lot of people to go, well, I'm an entrepreneur or I'm an artist, and some people see them as kind of mutually exclusive, but that's not the case, and that's what I've found. So how did the move to Geelong come about, and what change have you seen? 2018, you moved to Geelong? Yeah. What change have you seen in the 4 years that you've been here? Yeah, look, I moved here for work, so I, obviously knew of Geelong, and I spent a lot of time. As I lived in Brisbane, I lived in London, I lived all over the place. I moved here for the job, and I, they had a pretty strenuous interview process and a recruiter, and so I went through a number of interviews before I got the role. Came over here at the very last part of the process, and just went, this is just an awesome city. It's an awesome place. And loved that sense that kind of anything is possible here in Geelong. And look, I'd only been here for nearly 5 years. People that have lived here a long time said that's kind of a relatively new, if you had to come here 10, 15 years ago, at the end of sort of... demographic changes happened at that time. It was when I was growing up, very much industrial focused town, and it's very much changed to a service town. You change the people, you change the environment, don't you? So so I mean, what I've seen the change is a confidence in Geelong as a city in its own right, and I love the work that I think Committee for Geelong and G21 and others are doing, but I'm really happy to see that we're kind of moving to
this international city in its own
This
right.
the UNESCO
International City of Design, a clever and creative
Tell
city.
me from a
I
creative
love all
person,
of that.
what does that actually mean for Geelong? I mean, I look at this UNESCO thing and I'd go, as a normal general person, go, yeah, that looks like a good acronym.
Yeah.
What does it actually do? What does it mean for Geelong?
Sure. So I'm involved in the committee with the council for the UNESCO City of Design designation. Design is across everything we do. Good design. If you think about good design, people sort of think it's mostly around the built form, and it's definitely that. Like, how do we have really good planning standards and planning that makes development and makes people that want to build and want to come here aspirational and aspire to something that is cohesive in in the way it's designed. But design is also around, for me, it's around creativity. So the tenets of the three main factors of design thinking, one of them is about creativity. How do we think creatively? And if you have creativity, then you get innovation, right? So if you've got creativity, you've got innovation. And for me, I'm really interested in that across everything we do. Social design in terms of, we've got the NDI, we've got NDIS, down here we've got WorkSafe. How do we design socially so that there's good design within the community, that we don't leave anyone behind? It's about the built form, and then it's also about creativity in everything we do.
Yeah.
And I'm really passionate about that in the creative industries. I think quite often, and people ask me, why did we take the P out of GPAC and make it Geelong Arts Centre? It was because the creative industries are an industry in their own right, and they're a hugely growing industry, right? So if you look at, it's much more than putting on a few shows on a stage. Yeah. So you look at the creative industries as a whole, you've got filmmakers, we've got people that are filming us right now, you've got graphic designers, you've got architects, you've got people that make the sets, people that make the costume, game design. So it's a massive billions of dollars worth of industry. And so I've been really interested in that as an industry, a growth industry for Geelong, and I'm really passionate about that.
There's estimated 600 jobs being created just from
construction
jobs.
jobs.
That's construction.
Yeah.
I don't know how many jobs would it end up. Would you put a number on how many jobs you reckon you get out of this development of 186 million? What's the return?
We're going to double our workforce. So, that's at the moment we've got about 130 people on the books. So between casual and permanent staff, we're going to double that before we open in the middle of next year.
Well, that's substantial size business for Geelong. That's massive.
Well, it's not only that, it's the economic impact that the people that come from abroad into central Geelong now.
100%, and I think that's why I talk about it being an industry in its own right. I think we can sometimes there's a real notion that the arts is kind of exclusive. It's for a small group of people, but when you look at that economic impact, I mean, on a small scale, we're in Little Mallet Street right now. You speak to Karuji and Salador and others down here. They write their roster often about, on a much smaller scale, about what shows we've got on. Yeah. It's absolutely packed.
That's fantastic, because the best thing about, I think, where they're building them, why they're developing that end, is it connects well with this entertainment precinct, right? So it's just going to draw more people into this area, make these shops and these restaurants more vibrant. I went to Hamilton in Melbourne 2 weeks ago. I think it was awesome. Yeah. What a performance! Like, just amazing. But more that you can walk out of there and walk around the corner and get a really awesome meal that you can go to any bar you choose from. It's an experience to go up to Melbourne to do that, and I would hope that this creates the opportunity to get some of those big productions. Do you reckon we would get them down here to bring that experience for Melbourne people to come to Geelong?
So absolutely, the standard of performances we will. The big scale musicals are not something that we're going to be getting down Geelong anytime soon. You need 2,000 seat theatre, and you need to be able to run it for 3 or 4 weeks minimum. Yeah. But what we will get, and we see this already on a smaller scale. We have Paul Kelly, Kate Miller-Heidke. We had the Waifs. We have really big comedians coming through here at Costa Hall, a 1,400 seater. What we're building here at Little Mallet Street with our redevelopment is, which I'm most excited about, is a 600 seat, 550, 600 seat theatre that goes into flat floor. So you can put a band in there and get 900 people. So you'll be able to stand up and you'll be able to have a dance floor for 900 people. But we also can then put 300 people on round tables and do a conference or a dinner in there, dinner and a show. So it'll be really flexible, and you'll get people who want to come and perform in a venue like that, and it will be really, really intimate and really, really fun.
People have argued that the money we're spending on the convention centre doesn't work if there's not a pull to the town to have the conventions, right? Yeah. Is GAC the pull for these conventions? Because the convention centre, what's that, Mike? Another $180 million, $200 million being spent on that. That puts in one respect, puts in size the scale of the GAC development, how substantial it is, right? It's as big as the convention centre. Yet this is, instead of having a casino, we're going to have a really vibrant performing arts or arts centre to bring those people down.
So I think it's part of it, part of the mix of what makes this whole region really, really attractive, right? So I love the fact that some of the parts of Geelong and what makes it attractive is not one thing. So it's not the Arts Centre or the Convention Centre. I think it's a collection of those things. You've got this great cultural precinct, which is with the gallery, the art gallery. You've got Back to Back, which are a world-renowned theatre company. You've got this incredible library. You've got our redevelopment going on there. So that's a precinct in its own right. Then you only go a couple hundred metres and you've got Little Melbourne Street, all these restaurants. You know, you can come down here on a Friday, actually any night of the week now.
I think we've both been in any
night of the week. It's not just Friday or Saturday night, but any night of the week. And you've got people who they don't book. You know, COVID made it a bit harder, but people just rock up and go, there's so much to choose from. So you've got that, you've got the waterfront, you've got all this incredible, I've just had my parents here from Margaret River over the weekend. And the fact that we, went to our art gallery, brought him into 18th Amendment for a cocktail. We had breakfast over at the Paddington in Belmont, where I live. And there's so much here. So I think that Geelong Arts Centre and what we're doing will help us to secure some really interesting and cool conferences where they might do a couple of nights or a couple of days at the Convention Centre, and then they might come and do a gala dinner with us, and we might have trapeze hanging off the roof. Might have me on stilts.
You've touched on the redevelopment.
Yes.
Now we all know what stage one looks like and what that's done to the Arts Centre. But can you talk us through stage two? What can we expect?
Yeah, so it's stage three is what we're calling it now. But so we did Ryrie Street redevelopment, which is when I got here in 2018. That was this $38.5 million redevelopment. It was fully funded, but there was a hole in the ground, and so that building was built and opened in November 2019, and then promptly closed for COVID of March of 2020. But look, still, it's an incredible building. That building is the making space. So there's a co-working space there. Anyone in the creative industries can work out of there and have an office and all that sort of stuff. And then we've got these really awesome studios. So we've got a Studio 4 up there. It's the same size as the Playhouse Theatre in Melbourne. So you can come and rehearse a work here in Geelong that will then transfer to the main stage of the Arts Centre in Melbourne. And that's good. That was kind of the idea. And this year we're really excited. There's a show called Amelia that is we're partnering with Arts Centre Melbourne to produce that. And that was seeded here with a Geelong company. We gave them $5,000 access to space. They secured the rights, and this is now going to have a cast of 14 women, amazing actors, and then it'll be rehearsed for 4 weeks in Geelong and then transferred to the Arts Centre in Melbourne. That's incredible. Then it's going to go to Canberra, might go to Sydney, might go on to Brisbane after that. That was exactly what we were hoping it would do. The Little Mallet Street redevelopment, which is what we're calling is stage three, that's a $140 million building, and that's going to be open mid-2023. And that's cool because that's the performance spaces. So you got the making spaces in the first bit, the performance spaces in the Little Mallet Street redevelopment.
I particularly love the design. That's like a curtain that across a facade.
Yeah.
Looks like a curtain coming up.
It's fun, hey?
The facade, it's awesome.
Yeah,
and then it plays so well in with the library across the road and everything.
Yeah.
Like you've done such a good job just making sure the design isn't just a building.
Yeah.
Like it's going to be there for 50, 100 years and people are going to look and go, wow.
Thanks,
every day
mate.
they walk in.
We really want to challenge this notion of a black box theatre, and institutions can be kind of this kind of homogenous international design aesthetic. Yeah. And we wanted to change that. We wanted to go, what does an art centre for the future look like? We want people to feel like we wanted this, you want people to know what's going on inside.
Yeah,
so you can look through those windows, you can see what's going on, and the theatre at the front is going to open onto Little Mallet Street. It's got a 7 metre by 6 metre door, and you can actually open that door at a push of a button and you'll be able to see what's going on inside. Oh, wow. It's going to be really, really cool.
Obviously there's clear passion for the arts. In your words, how important are the arts to communities?
Look, I think getting involved in a community is what makes it a great place to live. And I think sport does that really, really well. I think arts do that really, really well. Yeah. And I think they a lot of people kind of have this arts or sport, it's everything. If you get involved in a place where you live, you participate, whether, I played sport from a young age. And what was awesome about that is you get involved in the place you live. I think arts do that really, really well. Before the redevelopment, GPAC at the time, they were, it was over 200,000 attendances a year. That's roughly the same as what goes through Cardinia Park a year.
Is the industry a bit like go big or go home industry? Like you've got to have really quality performances for it to work, but if you try and nick around the edges and end up with pretty low quality performances, it sort of falls on its face a bit. Is that sort of why the big spend?
I think it's around, the thing about a regional place like Geelong and is that you've got to be aspirational, right? So you've got to have the best of the best so that you can get international, when we can get international artists back again, and we started to see that again. International artists, you want the best touring acts in the country to come here all the time, and we say we want to be a must-play venue.
Yep.
They go, right, we're going to Victoria, we have to go to Geelong Arts Centre. And look, to be fair, that was there before with GPAC.
Yeah.
You know, it was an amazing venue. The history of the Arts Centre and the way the community loved that place, I have absolute respect for everything that was done there. But we have to be aspirational, and at the same time, we need to make room for all the incredible community artists that perform there all the time.
Yep.
So 50% of everything that happens at Geelong Arts
schools
Centre,
and et cetera.
the schools, the dance schools, the graduations, the local theatre companies that will do a 3-week season and sell out the Playhouse Theatre.
Yeah.
So about 50% of everything that happens is community driven. We want to support that, but we also want people to think outside the box and to be able to stage things in new and exciting ways. The technology is changing. People are doing digital sets now. And so instead of touring with a 40-foot truck and touring on the road, you'll project a 3D set onto the stage itself. So it's about trying to do the best we can do now, but aspire to something awesome in the future as well.
We've also always talked about inner city living.
Yeah.
And how that relies on activity around the CBD, and this will create, you know,
And it's
further
not just-
ambience and, you know,
It's not just
more
drinking
hospitality
activity,
that comes
like it's
around
an
it.
activity that's activity for itself. You know, not just focus around alcohol or around nightclubs. It's good to have something else, diversity in what you do.
Oh, the amount of people that come already, but you know, we're going to double that will come, and then also we want people to come and stay. We want people to come and stay a night or two.
Well, it helps
or
there's
three.
a hotel being built across the road.
We're so stoked with the amount of development that's going on around us. You know, we've been working really closely with Paul Franz and what's happening at with the Holiday Inn going across the road there. We think that's an incredible
It's a massive win for you guys that's happening at the same time.
Yeah, and vice versa for them. You know, I know that they've been really focusing on what this precinct, you know, in terms of the CBD and Little Mallet Street can offer to those residents. It's a two-way street, right? So they've got us across the road. You know, you speak with Bill Votsaris and what's happening with the post office on the corner there. That's going to be an amazing hotel development. And I think when you work together as a precinct and precincts around the CBD and around the region, then really you can just have a great offer.
We've seen those plans that Bill's got for the post office, and he has very much spent a lot of time carefully designing that building to match in with that. And he's recently telling us that he's redesigning what they've got to keep building in more for when the final product comes, what he does, it'll tie in with what you're doing, changing the frontage of that building so it faces back this way, back into the precinct and things like that. It's all really important that all these landowners are pulling together.
Yeah, absolutely, and that we work really closely with them. You know, the crossways between Ryrie Street and Little Mallet Street, that you can actually get across the city down laneways, and that you can cross from Ryrie Street to Little Mallet Street. We can, with our redevelopment, you'll be able to do that in 3 different places, get from Ryrie down to Little Mallet, and then you can take that further across down to Police Lane where Bill is and where the Kempy building is, and we want to make that a great thoroughfare. But then the whole city needs to be permeable in terms of being able to get away with it.
Well, that creates vibrancy, like when, you know, everyone feeds off each other there.
Exactly.
My only concern is car parking. What are we going to do about car parking? Have you got enough car parking there? Are you concerned about that?
Look, car parking is one of the things that I never thought I'd have to talk so much about, and I do. But car parking is a big issue. It was a big issue in Bunbury when I was there as a council. People would stop me in the street and say, "What are you going to do about car parking?" It is a big issue, but I think there's still a growing up as a city where you can't expect to pull up out the front of the shop you want to go to, get at, like literally at the front door. And if you have to walk 5 minutes, then you have to walk 5 minutes. If you go to Melbourne, you or I go to Melbourne, any of us go to Melbourne, I go half an hour early, by the time I need to get there, I need to find a car park, I need to either get public transport and get in there.
You're not pulling up at the front.
You're not pulling up at the front door. So look, there's 2,500 free car parks within 5-minute walk of Geelong Arts Centre.
It'll be easier in the evening time too, I imagine, and you'll probably get access to the city car park in the evenings as well.
The Civic car park, you've got the train station right there. You've got there's actually quite a lot of car parking around. I still think we need to have privately owned, or actually we need to have more multi-storey car parking in the CBD.
100%.
But I think until someone puts up the price of parking, then make it commercially viable, then it's going to be really hard to see that happen.
Yeah, pretty hard.
What development finished?
Yeah.
What's the core focus for the Arts Centre?
We've got to bring the buildings to life. So, you know, we always say that you're so much more than a building. So we're investing in artists, we're investing in shows, having professional shows made here in Geelong, and we've done quite a few of those. So that we're going to be focusing really heavily on that. And really just the focus for us is going to be on bringing the buildings to life, and that's about people. You know, the skills for not just Geelong Arts Centre, but skills development for the region. So, you know, training and development is something we're really focused on. And then we're also really excited about the Commonwealth Games. I think there's a real opportunity for the cultural offering to happen, a big part of it in Geelong. We've been involved in some really great conversations with the organising committee and with others that are coordinating that. And I think that, you know, what a great opportunity for us to showcase to the world what Geelong's all about.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that I think we know about, but I don't think locals are actually realise how much of a game changer there are. The other one that is Spirit of Tassie.
Yeah, huge.
I think once that's up, the amount of tourism that's going to rely, you know, straight into the CBD.
It's going to be pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And they've got to come sort of into the CBD. There's not much in between us and the harbour, so they're going to have to come from those docks up here to get accommodation.
Yeah.
So then, and they get up here and there's bars and there's places to go to, theatres and things. Like, it makes a whole trip, you know. You've also got the Lindsay Fox ferry, you know, from Docklands. So see the ferry just down here as well. So, you know, you're in Melbourne, you decide to catch the ferry to Geelong, you go to a show, stay overnight, get on the Tasmanian ferry out of Tassie, you experience Launceston.
Poor Little.
Come back again. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking that as well, but I wasn't going to correct him. He corrected him 3 times.
Well, big part of a vibrant CBD is a vibrant arts centre, and we're super excited to see the opening of this.
And we're super lucky to have someone of this calibre representing Geelong and putting this on for Geelong. So
100%.
thanks, Joel.
Oh, thanks, guys.
Thanks, Joel, and
Good
thanks for coming on Propped.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Well done.
See ya.
And welcome back. We've decided to forego our normal property of the week, much to Gareth's
I got sacked. Probably the week has been axed.
Well, a lot of the questions and a lot of the conversation around property is the interest rate rises. So we actually thought we'll bring in a property or an industry expert, Ross Mclachlan, who is a partner in MCP Property, and, you know, has a lot of experience in the financial services industry. So welcome, Ross. We thought we would have you in to talk, I guess, predominantly interest rates.
Sure.
But Roscoe, no pressure. He has axed my favourite segment that I ran, right? So this has got to stack up better. Right.
So who's it all on? You or me?
You.
Right.
Yeah, just to be clear. But you have done your homework,
Yeah.
which is the main thing. So just to give our viewers a bit of background story, I've known Ross for, 15 years plus.
Probably longer.
Affectionately known as Roscoe, Ross Mclachlan. But previously was the senior partner at National Australia Bank in Geelong. We used to call him the King of Geelong. He used to know pretty much everything happened through NAB would come through Ross back in the day. So very in-depth knowledge of the banking sector, from both high-end corporate banking right down to your local banking stuff. So your knowledge is something that I always tap into, don't I? Him and I, Roscoe and I, find ourselves at this bar most Friday nights talking about property and talking about interest rates and inflation and rates and where they're going. And these days, you're in a unique position in that you're working for MCP Group, which is your own business, really, and you're out there. You can sell any bank's loans, can't you, as a broker? So,
Absolutely.
So you get this unique perspective of what the whole banking's doing, rather than just talking about just what one bank's doing or one bank's policies are. I mean, you can rip the cap off, mate. You don't have to stick to one or the others, and you don't have to stick to the company line. You can tell us what's really going on, which is why we wanted you here today, because it's such an interesting time.
Absolutely.
There's heaps of stuff going on.
Couldn't agree more. We're in a real uncertain time just at the moment. Things are changing and changing very quickly. Rates are moving and moving very quickly.
Do you think they're doing the right thing? Is cash rates keep jumping?
I think they've had to put a cap on that rampant inflation that was going pretty hard.
What does my head in a little bit is we're sitting at 6.1% inflation. The world average, so Turkey's at 76% inflation. I think New Zealand's the closest to us on 7 or 8%. They're using monetary policy, which is an underlying property tax, really, because every business in Australia and property is lent into the property market. Our economy is very much hinged on what happens with the property market. So they're using the monetary policy via the cash rate to slow down inflation by taking money out of the economy, right? Via this, my opinion personally is, wouldn't it have been easier to open up borders and have free trade and get rid of some of these agreements where we can't. Or we have to sell our goods overseas, for example, the timber. Had we kept all the timber back in Australia, we would have had the supply and we wouldn't have the timber shortage.
potentially.
All these sorts of
Absolutely.
things.
The main causes of where we are material and labour shortage, commodity issues. Like, we haven't seen those sort of numbers that have come through since the 70s.
No.
So it's been a market change and it's hit us very quickly. So to react to those sort of scenarios, to put a cap on things and get things in a level playing field, they've had to put it, and the quickest thing they can do is raise rates on a short-term basis.
Have they gone too hard, too quick, in your opinion?
No, I don't think so. Look, you asked the RBA last year, and last year they weren't going to move rates until 2024.
Yeah.
So it's been a massive shift in a short period of time.
As early as January, they were still saying that.
Correct.
Now we found ourselves with 4 interest rate rises.
Correct.
And proposed another 3.
Look,
You still think we'll get another one in September?
absolutely. Look, where we're sitting at the moment. So May of this year, we were sitting at a cash rate of 0.1%.
Which is emergency lows. We all recognise that.
So effectively free money. So now at 1.85, the indications are that by early next year, we'll cap out at the end of this year at a rate of around 3.1 by the end of this year. So we're potentially looking at another 50, potentially, due to where the labour market is at the moment. I think we'll have to go
another
50.
50, but is it going to go? It's got to go 1.25 more than where we are now.
Correct.
I can't see it going that hard because we're already seeing it slow back. We know that inflation's come off. We're just waiting for the figures to catch up.
I suppose the issue is also that we've got a lag effect with everything that we do. So if we're putting those measures in place, we're looking 3 months behind all the time. So
the interest rate rises that
we all know that fuel prices
implemented 3 months ago are starting to have effect.
And you know that fuel prices came down week before last dramatically across the country. We know that timber prices have come back a little bit. You know, we're starting to get supply back in the vegetable market through the the impact of the floods and stuff like that. So on the ground, we're seeing the inflation's come off a little bit. We've still got massive labour shortages, but they're talking about opening up the borders to wage to extra 10,000 workers next year.
We've also seen that discretionary spending in hospitality and retail come off as well, which I would have thought they were the 2 industries over the last 2 years that could ill afford a slowdown in those industries.
Absolutely.
So my opinion is that we'll have a sharper peak than what they're saying, what most of the experts are saying. I think we'll go 0.5 again, maybe another 0.25 after that, but I don't reckon we'll get to 3.1. I reckon we'll be about 2.85. Something like that.
Well, there's various commentaries, and all the banks have got different opinions at the moment where we're sitting. Just remembering, not so long ago they were talking 4% by next year, so that's already back to that somewhere around that 3.35 mark to 3.5.
Imagine 4%.
So coming back again to 24 down to a figure of somewhere between 2.3 and 2.5%.
We did some research recently. The last time, to put in perspective, the average 10-year trend for interest rates, home loans, variable interest rates, is 5.6%. So we've had a good run. Like we've had a couple of years of the lowest interest rates ever. So in perspective, if we end up with variable rates below 5.6%, we've done well. But we're still in the top in the world probably of economies, and the property market will drive along as normal. So if you go to a 2.85, so let's say 3, we'll agree on 3, you're probably talking about 5%, aren't you?
Correct.
About a 5% interest rate.
Correct.
Which is, from where people were, Mike, it's $800, $750 more on $1 million mortgage per month. It's a fair chunk.
It is, yeah.
You can also look at that in another aspect, that where we're sitting now, households' balance sheets are very strong at the moment, have been for a number of years. Okay, so about 70% of, going say to a home loan sort of scenario, 70% of home loan holders are in front on those loans.
Yeah.
Now you're looking at, pre-COVID, there was around about 11 months ahead of repayments.
Yep.
Now we're sitting at approximately 23 months ahead on every home loan.
Right?
That's
on
pretty
average.
good. Yeah.
So there's a fair buffer, to cover the headwinds that are coming and potentially.
So there's one other point of banking. You see this from a very different perspective. You get to see what it's like putting together these packages. Has it become harder to bank people now over the last few months? Like, are banks asking for more information? Are they trying to elongate the process of lending? What's it look like for you putting together people's lending applications?
Yeah, look, right at the moment, as we said earlier, we're in a really period of uncertainty right at this moment. With rates rising so quickly, it's caught not just borrowers, but it's also caught the banks on the hop a little bit. So going back not so long ago when we were assessing commercial loan applications, we work normally on what's called an ICR ratio, which is an interest cover ratio. So effectively, the cost of your finance against the income coming from that asset. So we worked on usually a 2 times basis. And all banks have worked on that in the past, and historically that's kept everyone in pretty good stead. With the last 4 rate increases since May, we're seeing the rates are historically coming from all-time lows to where are they going at the moment. So banks were working off actuals going back 6 months ago. Now they're working off forecasts, a lot of them.
Yeah. So the net effective is that ICR rate's been closed down. And a lot of our clients are sitting there with, instead of having 2 buy, they've got 1.5 buy or 1.2 buy. And that's a breach of their mortgage covenant, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Which that's the big risk here,
Absolutely.
Isn't it?
So a lot of banks at the moment, and lenders, not just banks I should say, lenders are looking at reviewing that position, and they're reviewing that position fairly quickly because, as you quite rightly said, a lot of lenders...
Well, I know that a certain large lender just dropped theirs, I think, last week to 1.6 from a 2.
Correct.
So that's one already moving. And we never heard about ICR rates before this. No one's ever talked about it forever. And now all of a sudden they're the hot word.
Yeah, well, it used to always just be LVR, so loan to value ratio. So we worked on a level of albeit 50, 60%. Now it's working more so towards an interest cover ratio. So that's the most important criteria.
Mike, the biggest thing about this ICR rate is we need rents to move. Right, and where we've got the problem in Geelong and regionally, it's probably across the board. Rents for commercial rents haven't changed, haven't moved much.
No.
How are you seeing residential rates? Because rentals, because we sort of need them to improve if the ICR problem's going to go away.
Well, they've crept up in the last 2 years because of supply demand, and I don't think that's going to change. The amount of population coming in, it's hard to get a rental. It's still hard to get a rental. So the inference of people offering 6 months in advance, 12 months to try to secure it.
Is that residential or commercial, you mean?
Residential.
Residential, yeah.
Residential. So we're still in that space, still tightly held, or held tightly. So I think there's going to be pressure both on commercial and residential rents.
We've still got a fair bit of vacancy around the town though. We sort of need that foot traffic back in the town. This goes back to public policy as much as anything else, right? We need these big government agencies to come back to work, to drive the shops, to drive people wanting to rent these spaces, to push the rents up so that these ICR rates go away. It all hinges on foot traffic at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Ross, we keep hearing the experts on TV and whatnot saying it pays to shop around. How easy is it to shop around if you're locked in with someone?
Yeah.
And what's your advice for perhaps some of the viewers out there?
Yeah, well, a couple of things, and once again, it's a very interesting point in time with our market. So particularly we can look at the home loan space initially. So all banks have what they call a front book and a back book. So a back book comprises existing clients, yourselves, ourselves. We've got home loans with whatever lender. So we're getting offered at whatever rate is on the market. Rates go up 50 points, we cop that 50 points.
Yeah.
However, those same banks are now offering new clients rates of up to 60 points less and some cashback enhancements entirely.
Excuse me, what about the loyalty to it?
Well, so there's some. So this brings us to the next point. So, we all review our. Well, we don't all review. We should review our home loans and so forth on an annual basis, as we do our car insurance, our home insurance. It's all well and good when rates are going down. People look at them and want to get the best rate, but at the time when the rates are going up at such a quick level, this is the time more so than ever, you should be keeping very close to either your bank or your broker and having those discussions, because there's a perfect opportunity at this point in time to either get a better deal or structure yourself in a far better position.
Do you think that the cost of living costs and assessments that come into that play, is the rising living costs having an impact on that as well? So like if I was to bring my loan to you and you have to review it again, and you're going to go back to that cost of living thing, because everything's higher, is that going to play out negatively to me?
Could potentially. That's where I indicate a review by a broker or your bank is the best thing you could do at any stage.
Before you go to the bank.
Before you lodge, sit down, run the numbers, see where you are. You've got to remember, when banks for the last 3 years have, or 3 or longer in fact, have stress tested every loan they've had come across their book. So they're already looking at, if the loans were 3 and 4% going back a couple of years ago, they're assessing them at a rate of around 7%.
Yep.
So they've put a 3% buffer on. So what that has also done is held everyone in pretty good stead for those rate increases.
Yep.
However, now is the time more than ever with the rising rate environment and to look at your existing structures and see what you can
Would you be fixing?
It's an interesting question. In the last week, fixed rates have come off for the 3-year term up to 1.6% from where they were.
So what's that tell you?
So it says we're in uncertain times.
Uncertain
That's exactly
times.
what it's saying. So, as we said, the RBA said 6 months ago we weren't going to move rates until 2024. Look what's happened in that period.
Yep.
And we've seen fixed rates move far quicker than the variable rate, as they do over a longer period of time. But it looks, as to your point earlier on, Gareth, where you're indicating rates may be going, it's that lag effect. I think we'll get to a point where we're going to have to sit and take stock of where we are and have a look at things. As I said, last week commercial lending came back about 40 points, and some of the home loan rates, 3-year terms, 1.5 to 1.6.
That's not bad.
So it's a big change,
Big jump.
big shift.
Well, thanks, Ross. We're getting the wrap up from the old head honcho over here, so we've been. But I did enjoy that segment much better than our co-host's favourite one there. So, but anyway, thanks for coming on and sharing some real insight in terms of what's happening in the market. It's a real market conversation piece at the moment. So anyone wants to reach out to Ross, you can find him at MCP Group for a little bit of advice. And again, thanks for coming on Props.
Thanks, Will. Thanks, Gareth. Appreciate your time.
Pleasure.